Shalom everybody, and welcome to Beit Tefillah. I'm going to do kind of a different video today, one all about our Sukkot trip to the beach this year. Now I know a lot of people like to gather for Sukkot and sleep in tents for wherever they decide to go and spend Sukkot at the end of every summer. And years ago I was a huge fan of camping. I used to do a lot of backpacking, and I'd had my tent in there, and I had all my, my collapsible pots and pans, and I had my bedroll and my sleeping bag on the bottom, and sometimes I'd go camping for a week. But 35 years ago, I broke my back in many places, and after that, sleeping in a tent became about impossible for me. The past couple of years, my wife Gina and I used a camper as our sukkah, but this year we spent Sukkot in Corpus Christi right on Padre Island. We were invited to do so by a wonderful couple that made it all possible, as we could not have afforded to do such a thing on our limited budget. So we thank them dearly, as it was very generous of them, and we were certainly blessed. Our son Mitch and his wife Jen were also there with us, and all four of us all went down, and we all had a lot of fun. They were staying in a very nice place, about a 5-minute drive from us was all, and we got together with them about every day, and it was great. Now, we're supposed to feast for Sukkot, and let me just say that we all took that very seriously. We ate very well. Gina had done some cooking prior to the trip, and we brought some of her great home cooking down with us. But there are many great restaurants there, so we ended up trying quite a few of them. I'm a big fan of sushi, and we had that a few times, and gyros too, and we can't really get any of that where we live in southwest Arkansas, so we took advantage of the food, and we feasted quite a bit. Now, the whole place has a very casual feel to it, and here's an example of a photo that Gina took when she was walking the beach. Now, here's a list of things not permitted on the beach, and if you look at the very last item, it says ties. That's hilarious, but that just shows you how casual they want to keep this whole area, and that's kind of a neat thing. Now, we moved from Florida to where we live in southwest Arkansas, and that was about 13 and a half years ago, and we hadn't been to the beach since then, and wow, did we miss the sand and the surf and the salt air and the shells and the palm trees and the seagulls and the pelicans, all of it. And it was great to get back to it, but this time in a different location, as we had never been to Corpus Christi or Padre Island before. We never even been to the Gulf Coast in Texas before. We took a lot of video and took a lot of pics during this trip. So just for fun, I thought I'd do a quick little video about the area we visited and our trip for Sukkot this year. From where we live in Arkansas, it was about an 11-hour drive for us to get to our destination down there. And that isn't too bad. That's about as far as I can go before I'm going to start locking up in a vehicle from sitting that long. But we arrived about 90 minutes before sunset, just prior to the start of Sukkot. This was also our first whole experience with this whole Airbnb thing, and let me tell you that we will never ever stay in a regular hotel again if we can help it. This whole Airbnb thing is just a wonderful experience, at least it was for us, and that's definitely the way to go. So if you get a chance to do that, try it, because if you get a really good host and you get a really nice place, the deals are incredible. And we had a whole place to ourselves, and it was like a home. There was beds and TVs in there, and pots and pans and dishwasher, full-size washer dryer. It was really a wonderful place to visit. So we stayed in this wonderful, great temporary dwelling place, for us anyway, and that part of the country is absolutely beautiful. I absolutely love Texas, and I always wanted to visit the Gulf Coast there. Two of my wife's absolute favorite things to do is walking and being at the beach, and putting those two things together, I almost couldn't drag her out of there to bring her home, because she just absolutely loved it. Now, the clouds in the morning there on the coast are beautiful. I did a time lapse of them here. And this consists of me sitting basically in one spot for an hour next to a video camera, filming the clouds and the beach activity as the people walk by and all the clouds are rolling by. But the final video is neat, so it's worth it. I grabbed my phone and took another video of me making this video. And I could have just sat there all day. The temps were fairly warm, and some days were actually pretty hot, but the strong wind off the water, if you were right next to the water, made it very nice. At least when it was very hot, it made it bearable. You know, I like to mess around with cameras and drones and doing all this stuff. So I thought, you know, as long as I'm sitting there and enjoying the beach and soaking up some of the sun, that I would sit there for an hour and film the waves and do a wave time lapse. So I tried it here, and this first video was sped up a little bit. This one looks the best. But then here I compressed it further, as you can see, and this is just way too fast. So just for laughs, I sped it up again, and it looks completely ridiculous. So I won't be using that footage for anything else. You know, if the tides moved in and out quicker, that would have been interesting to see them coming and going during a time lapse. But the tides were anywhere from 7 to 10 hours apart, so I wasn't going to sit there and film that with the camera for that long. That's just not going to happen. But that would be neat if I had a location that was right on the beach where I could set the camera up outside the window. But I didn't want to sit there and guard it and bake in the sun for that long. We love the wildlife, and we love watching the birds on the beach. Whether it's just one seagull standing there calmly and surveying the ocean, or a flock of gulls feeding, or many different seabirds, including pelicans that are in large flocks all along the beach. There were a lot of birds there, and it was a beautiful thing to see. And of course I had to bring my drone there with us, but the rainstorms were quite often, and it was very windy at our location. The rain can come very quickly, and on 2 occasions we got absolutely soaked before we could make the quick walk back to where we were staying. So I was only able to take the drone up one time, but at least I got a neat video of it zooming up above the place where we stayed, see it going up above the palm trees, and then you can see the pool. I went up to about 300 feet, and then I panned up to show how close we were to the beach. It was only probably just a 2-minute walk was all. It was nice and close. Then I took the drone up a little bit higher and looked around before I brought it back down. We took our dog for a walk on the beach, and he's not a big fan of baths or water, so he wanted to keep his distance back from the surf. He was more comfortable when he was being held at the water's edge, so here's a picture of me holding him the first day with the sunrise coming up behind me. This area took a pretty good hit from the hurricane, I believe it was Harvey, that hit last year, that dealt a direct blow to Houston. Most of the damage here was due to wind and not from the storm surge. There's a lot of repairs that are still ongoing, a lot of roofing, a lot of ACs up on the roofs that are getting fixed, that sort of thing. But they do have a seawall that they built here. I think it was like 30 years ago. It runs about 1.5 miles. And it's at least 10 feet high, and some of the locals told me that during Hurricane Harvey that it really helped a lot. The surge came over the wall in just a couple of places, but not bad. The wall mainly runs along a stretch of beach where the hotels and condos are right up next to the sand dunes. So this 1.5 mile long wall is just primarily right where everything sits on the beach. And you get about a 1/4 mile south where we were staying on North Padre, you can go for 60 miles to the channel, and there's really nothing there. You could just, and then if you went past that, well, then you could drive on the beach all the way to Mexico. Okay, it was, I believe it is the longest barrier island in the world. I'm not sure about that, but I think it is. But it's very pristine, and it's beautiful. Back when we were living in Florida, one of my main hobbies there was collecting seashells. And I did a lot of dredging and snorkeling and diving, and I collected some shells for the Mote Marine Laboratory down in Sarasota, and I donated a collection to a museum in Innsbruck, Austria. And I just had a ball doing that. And so, of course, I wanted to do some of that on this trip, and it didn't disappoint because we were in an area that had quite a few seashells. And there's a lot of micro shells in there too, and I do that. I screen for that, but there's some larger ones in there too. Now, if you go to the main beach, you're going to see a lot of things like these coquinas, and these things get constantly washed out of the sand by the rough surf, and they scurry to burrow themselves back in the sand to protect themselves. But to find the good shells, you have to get off the main beaches and get onto the grass flats or the mud flats. And a lot of people don't like to go to those places because they're a little stinky and they smell a little sulfury. But that's where a lot of the shells are. Wherever you see a lot of the wading birds walking out there, that's where you're going to find a lot of shells. So I was fortunate enough to do some shell collecting a couple times away from Padre Island, and I did pretty well for the short amount of time that I got to spend collecting. Here's a few of them that I was able to get cleaned up to show in this video. I still have to clean the rest of them, but they are soaking for now, and I'm gonna have to clean those in the weeks to come. When we lived in Florida, we visited beaches all over the state, like I just said, and in a lot of places we saw a lot of inappropriate swimwear, to put it in a nice way. There were a lot of thongs and T-backs, and we even saw some nudity, but we didn't see any of that. Not in Corpus Christi or not on North Padre where we were. It's very family oriented. We saw a lot of families with kids. There were so many different activities going on there. We saw a lot of elderly people, and it was very clean. Everyone was very friendly, and it was not like a party atmosphere, not at all. It was just like everybody going to the beach to relax and have a good time or participate in a lot of these activities going on. And I got some video of some of this, so I thought I'd show you a few of these activities. There's people windsurfing there with parasails, or they're flying these large parasail or parafoil kites. And my wife was talking to one lady on the beach one day who was working out with one of these kites, and I don't know what kind of pound pull that this kite had. She was so fit, and she was using all of her muscles to try to control this kite. And with a strong gust of wind, it might have picked her up in the air a little bit. I really don't know if it was that big, but she was flying this kite, and she was just so ripped and so toned from just, she said she does it every day and she just loves it. And it was something to see. I wish I'd have got some video of that, but I didn't. And others were flying motorized paragliders high above the beaches. And one paraglider came close to us that I was able to get a little video of that. But this one particular day, there must have been a half a dozen of these guys out there. And boy, that sure looked like a lot of fun. As you're walking along the beach there, you're going to see sometimes in each direction some really long piers that they are built very well, and they go way out into the water. And the fishing there is absolutely excellent. I didn't bring my fishing equipment. I will if I go back. But I did a lot of saltwater fishing in Florida too, and I caught a lot of redfish. I caught a lot of Spanish mackerel, and that seemed to be most of what people were catching there. And the piers were lined up, and the amount of fish that these people were catching was just, it was stunning. Beautiful fish, and birds diving everywhere, and people pulling in fish. It's just so diverse and rich in wildlife and sea life. We saw some jellyfish. My wife got a picture of a very strange one that washed up on the beach. I'll pop it up on the screen here. But yeah, the fishing was something that I got to do if we go back, because it was amazing. Here's a couple we met on the pier that were bringing their catch of redfish back to the cooler in their car. There were a lot of these huge redfish caught on this particular pier that morning. I saw some people with 5 or 6 of them in a 5-gallon bucket. Here's a look from the pier back to where we were staying. I'll put a little arrow here to show you approximately where our unit was. Another activity you can do is what our son Mitch and his wife Jen did, is they set up a little horseback riding on the beach excursion. And they just had a blast. And I really wanted to film it with my drone. They were going at sunset, and I thought, wow, now that would make just a spectacular piece of footage, just filming, you know, far enough away from the horses not to spook them, but just with the sunset, if I was, you know, hovering over the ocean and filming them. But it was so windy, and I really didn't want to dump my drone in the drink, so to speak, so I didn't. So instead we just took this little bit of video here, and we took some still photos, and they also got some other still photos too from other people, and they really had a good time doing that. You're also allowed to drive and park on the beach here. You need to buy a parking permit. It's only $12 per year, which is $1 a month, and that's very cheap. And but it's great if you've got like a family and you got a bunch of beach chairs and you got coolers or you got a grill. You can even have fires on the beach. And it's wonderful to just pull up there, and especially if you're not staying in a place that's right on the beach, you don't want to carry stuff that far. Just pull up with your truck, pull up with your car, unload the family, get everything set up, and you're right on the beach. You can be just, you know, feet from the water, 15, 20 feet from the water. And that's a wonderful thing. It's not like Daytona Beach, Florida. We've been there when it's just been packed with cars on the beach, and that's kind of crazy. We don't like that kind of thing. And there would be just a few cars here and a few cars over there. There wasn't many. It's not known as like a party beach like Daytona. But we sure had a great time for Sukkot this year, and we were very blessed to be there with our son Mitch and his wife Jen. So whatever you did and wherever you went for Sukkot, we hope that you had a great time. So thanks for watching, and shalom from all of us here at Beit Tefillah Productions. Everybody be blessed and have a wonderful day.